Hello, I'm Natasha Hussein, and this is Newsfeed, your dose of what people are talking about online. France's left-leaning parties have managed to secure a surprise lead in the second round of snap elections, albeit a slim one. But it was a tactical victory hard-won against the far right that tapped into social media and artificial intelligence to spread its message and woo young people. Leftist coalition New Popular Front took the bulk of the seats, followed by French President Emmanuel Macron's centrist alliance, and in third place, the far-right Nationalist Party. It was a historic first round, with the far right led by Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella surging to the top spot with more than a third of the vote. The sea of blue represents votes for the far right. A tactical play from the left and centrist parties saw some 200 candidates drop out of the second round, leaving many voters a stark choice. Do you want the far right or an alternative? The New Popular Front came out on top, but does not have a majority. France has a hung parliament. Macron's ruling party lost 80 seats in the snap election he himself called. The phenomenal first-round success of the national rally and the anxiety it instilled, especially among minorities, led to a surge in voter turnout. Their ballots denied the far right a parliamentary win. Across the nation, leftists and centrists celebrated the outcome. They're calling le choc or la surprise. Stunned by their defeat, protests by far-right supporters turned into riots and clashes with police in Paris and other major cities. Demonstrators set wooden barricades alight and police responded with tear gas. Over 24 people were arrested.
It's already a relief because it's France. Today, France is a cosmopolitan. Today, we do not take the ideas of the RN or anything else. Today, the New Popular Front is still France.
Is that a good score? It's a total stalemate. That's what it is. That's what I think, because there's no agreement between them. So it's not really a front. It's going to be a cutthroat battle, and the country is going to be ungovernable for a while. That's how I see it, unfortunately.
Above all, we're happy. Right now, we're going to savor our victory over the national rally.
The results were felt as far away as New Caledonia in the South Pacific, with a historic win for pro-independence supporters. The French territory has 2 seats in the National Assembly. One of them went to Indigenous Kanak Emmanuel Chibao. It's the first time in almost 4 decades that a pro-independence candidate has won a seat in the French Parliament. New Caledonia witnessed 2 weeks of rioting in May after a contested reform to the electoral system. It would have granted French residents who have lived in the territory for at least 10 years the right to vote in provincial elections. 9 people were killed in the violence, including 2 policemen. Residents there are hoping for successful negotiations between pro- and anti-independence camps and a return to stability. The results have plunged France into a precarious situation. The 3 top parties do not have enough seats to rule independently and no history of working together. Joel is in Paris and explains what comes next.
We're outside the National Assembly, France's parliament, which is where the new MPs elected in Sunday's election are going to be arriving any minute, essentially, to try and hash out what the new government in this country looks like. It has been an election that has been defined by the division and rancor of not just the parties, but also of the countries as well. And even though the election provided a shock result in the form of the New Popular Front, the left-wing alliance of parties dominated by Jean-Luc Mélenchon, and the shock result of the fact, too, that the National Rally, the far right, didn't actually end up in power. What it has ended up with is a divided parliament as well, with no clear winner, even though the New Popular Front do have the most number of candidates. The election, too, has also been dominated by social media. There has been a huge use in particular of TikTok, and the effectiveness of the far right in that form has really been a key element of that. Jordan Bardella, the 28-year-old president of the National Rally, has been hugely popular. His TikTok videos have garnered something like 100 million views on TikTok over the campaign. Marine Le Pen, the leader of the National Rally, was second with the most views in terms of candidates, around 22 million or so. Indeed, of the 9 out of 10 most viewed videos on TikTok during this campaign election, 9 of them have been from Jordan Bardella. It attests to the importance of TikTok and in particular of social media in general during the election, as I said. Interestingly, the youth vote has really been spurred on to take part in this election as a result. Participation among young people in the election itself was up from something like 30% up to around 57% in the last 2 years. Clearly a lot more young people voting, a lot more people engaged with social media as well. Despite the effectiveness, however, of the National Rally's campaign on social media, it has actually been the new Popular Front, the left-wing alliance, that saw the most votes from them. Something like 40% of them have been casting their votes, 18 to 24-year-olds casting their votes for the new Popular Front.
Macron rolled the dice and took a risky gamble in June by calling for the snap election after his alliance's crushing defeat to the National Rally in European Parliament elections. The anti-immigrant party tapped into voter frustration about rising costs, failing public services, migration, and security. And a big part of the party's appeal was its president, Jordan Bardella. He's the fresh face of an old party, young, charismatic, and TikTok savvy. Bardella is credited with making the far-right party's controversial messaging palatable to a wider, younger audience. Nick has his story.
Just a week ago, Jordan Bardella had a shot at becoming France's Prime Minister.
Français.
But that dream has been dashed after his National Rally's party's shock third-place finish in Sunday's runoff. A far cry from weeks of projections of a comfortable win. French President Emmanuel Macron had hastily cobbled together a left-wing alliance to thwart the far right.
Unfortunately, the alliance of dishonor and dangerous electoral formation by President Emmanuel Macron and Prime Minister Gabriel Attal with the far-left parties are depriving the French people of a policy of recovery. By deciding to deliberately paralyze our institution, Macron has not only pushed the country towards uncertainty and instability, but deprived the French people of any response to the day-to-day difficulties for many months to come.
Bardella's mentor, Marine Le Pen, will most likely be the National Rally's candidate for the 2027 presidential election. During the recent election campaign, the pair styled themselves as American-style running mates, with Le Pen vying for the presidency and Bardella as PM.
We will continue to defend France and the French, defend the ideas for which we were elected, because once again, we are the only united and coherent group of this National Assembly. We know what we are defending, we will continue to defend it. And as Jordan Bardella said, we will always be with the French people and defending their interests.
At just 28 years old, Bardella has brought his party's problematic far-right ideologies to the mainstream. He's seen as the far-right's poster boy and is huge on TikTok with more than 1.9 million followers. His TikToks and charisma have helped soften his party's image, long tainted by racism and anti-Semitism.
He's almost a rock star among his fans. Apart from this attractiveness of the persona of this young man, he comes from the suburbs of Paris, and so he's been forging this storytelling about, being raised in the suburbs and seeing the suburbs being submerged by an immigrant population. So he's a live example of what the National Rally wants to fight against, which is immigration, and also his name is Bardella. He comes from an Italian family, so a family of immigrants, but the right kind of immigrants for the National Rally.
While the National Rally didn't get the resounding victory it was expecting, it's far from defeated. Le Pen has been quick to point out that her party did make massive gains, and that'll serve as a springboard for even bigger victories.
Across the Atlantic, U.S. President Joe Biden is sticking to his guns, saying he'll be the Democratic nominee in November's face-off with Donald Trump. The declaration comes in the face of criticism following June's shaky debate performance. Now, polls paint a grim picture for Biden, with voters and Democrats increasingly worried about his ability to lead. Lara has more on whether Biden can prove he's still got what it takes before time runs out.
President Joe Biden is back on the campaign trail, despite growing calls for him to step aside after his poor debate performance.
He struggled immediately when he got on stage and began speaking. He seemed to have moments where he lost his train of thought, stuttered over his words, and couldn't form proper thoughts and sentences.
Social media reactions have been brutal.
What?
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts.
Scholar throughout the world, the most respected, wanted it brought back to the States. I did that.
But Biden insists he is the best shot of beating Trump.
I don't walk as easy as I used to. I don't speak as smoothly as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth.
Many supporters echo his claims and say there are bigger issues than Biden's age.
I'm voting for him because he'll protect abortion rights and contraception and IVF, our efforts to combat climate change and fair maps and a Voting Rights Act and democracy. Let's not pretend that the debate changed any of that.
He helped rescue the American economy from impending economic collapse. He quickly disseminated COVID vaccines, probably saving hundreds of thousands of lives. He rebuilt relationships with our allies to protect democracy around the world, and he passed more bipartisan bills than any president in decades.
If you're going to ask me who I'm going to vote for in relation to the old guy or the dictator, I'm going to vote for the old guy. These two things are not the same. One is old, one is dangerous.
Still, a CBS News YouGov poll shows 72% of voters are worried about his mental sharpness. Even 45% of Democrats, including some big names, think he should pass the torch to Vice President Kamala Harris.
The Vice President would be a phenomenal president. I think she has the experience, the judgment, the leadership ability to be an extraordinary president.
Could she win overwhelmingly, Congressman?
Some polls show Harris might fare better than Biden against Trump, though it will still be a close race.
I am running and going to win again.
But Biden is still in the race and refusing to step down.
You still beat Trump!
Well, we won't know that until November.
Over the weekend, Kenyans gathered for a memorial concert following deadly protests that rocked the country over planned tax hikes. It coincided and has been likened to the famous Saba Saba, a Swahili word which translates to 7-7. Seventh day of the seventh month that led the country to multi-party democracy 34 years ago. There's been a lot of similarities in the violent response by security forces in both situations. The latest one was the first ever protest led by the youth and largely organized on social media. They mobilized each other under the hashtag Reject Finance Bill 2024. Their dominant online engagement captured the violent response by security agents that led to the killings. President William Ruto conceded, withdrew the finance bill, and has been engaging the youth on X. That has done little to diffuse tension, though, in the East African nation, as protesters are now calling on him to step down.
What you're telling the president, you have the Kenyan constitution, follow it. That's what you're saying, because, for example, Linturi is in office. He sold our parents fake fertilizer. Why is he still in office? The people who are in his government, who had rape cases, murder cases, corruption cases, all of them were dropped. You're saying, stop, Kenya has a lot of people. Stop appointing people who are corrupt into office. Yes.
And maybe talking about that, what's the best way that the fallen soldiers could be probably honored? Because of course we had lives lost. What's the best way we can honor these people?
Like every town should have a road named after them. So Sakaja, we can have a street where we have if you go to Germany and you walk around Berlin, you'll find places where they have put names on the floor of people who died, who were killed during the Holocaust. So what we can be able to do, name roads after them, remember their names. If you own a matatu, get one of these fallen soldiers, put their picture on your car, let their names live forever.
And the ongoing European Football Championship has kicked in a new trend. It's not a corner, but a croner. Confused? I was too when I first heard about it, but this is a Turkish doner sandwich between a croissant instead of bread. Doner kebab is the delight of Turkish cuisine. That's exactly what it looks like on your screen. Juicy grilled meat, delicious. The origin of replacing flatbread with a croissant is debatable though, but it was inspired a week ago before the Turkey-Austria football match. Why? Well, Austria claims it invented the croissant before the French made it their favorite breakfast. And of course, doner kebab is as Turkish as you can get. So put the two together and you've got a, you guessed it, croner. Of course, you don't have to try every new food trend, but this one I would certainly love to munch down on. And that's our show. Find our latest stuff on YouTube and do subscribe to our channel. See you soon.